Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time we're going to be talking about something that I think all parents can relate to, especially in this digital age, and that is getting toddlers excited about the world beyond the screen.
Yes.
So you've provided some excerpts from a guide all about encouraging healthier habits in our little ones.
Yes. And what's so interesting is the approach it takes. It's not just about like demonizing screens.
Yeah.
It's about really understanding, why these outdoor and creative activities are so important
Right.
for development, and then finding ways to make those alternatives irresistible.
That makes a lot of sense. So I guess the question is, how do we do that? I think about toddlers and I think about the outdoors. And, the first thing that pops in my mind is just all that energy they always seem to have.
Yeah,
Seems like a natural fit, right?
absolutely. And the source really emphasizes, the range of developmental benefits that come from active outdoor play.
Oh.
And it's not just about, getting them tired out so they'll go to sleep.
Right.
We're talking motor skills, coordination, cognitive development.
Really?
Yeah. So, for example, when they're running and climbing, they're not just, strengthening muscles and improving balance.
Right.
They're actually learning to assess risks, to problem solve, navigate their environment, all those things.
So it's like their brains and their bodies are kind of working together
Exactly.
in this like amazing symphony of development.
Yeah.
I love that. What about, I think about like when I was a kid, I spent so much time just building forts out of blankets and boxes.
Oh, yeah.
Just anything I could find.
Yeah.
What about creativity? Does the guide talk about that?
It does. It does. And that's what's so fascinating is how they connect this outdoor play to creativity.
Okay.
Because they argue that nature provides this kind of open-ended canvas for a toddler's imagination.
I see.
So, a simple stick can become a magic wand, pile of leaves. Suddenly it's like a treasure trove.
Oh, wow.
And a muddy puddle.
Yeah.
An ocean to be explored.
That makes me think of all those activity suggestions in the guide. I'm thinking backyard scavenger hunts. Yeah. Building a mini obstacle course, maybe like nature-inspired art projects, that kind of thing.
Those are great, yeah. And the beauty is that they're all pretty simple to set up.
Yeah.
And they just tap into that natural curiosity that
Right.
toddlers that they have.
Exactly.
Like take the backyard scavenger hunt, You're not just sending them out there to like run around aimlessly. You're giving them a challenge, encouraging them to observe, to look around, to, maybe solve some clues, find that hidden treasure.
It's like turning your backyard into an adventure zone.
Exactly.
I love that. But, sometimes I have to admit, it feels like screens have this like almost magical power
Right.
to pull toddlers in. And how do you make these other activities just as enticing?
That is the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the guide tackles this head on. And it's not just about saying no screens.
But-
It's about creating that balance.
Okay.
So let's talk about setting those screen time limits. What kind of strategies does the guide suggest for that?
Well, one thing that really jumped out at me
Mm-hmm.
was the emphasis on routine.
Mm-hmm.
The guide really argues that consistent schedules help toddlers thrive
Right.
because, they know what to expect. So if you kind of build in these screen time windows as part of that routine,
Yeah.
it feels less like this constant battle.
That's a great point. And the guide actually goes even deeper, suggesting that involving toddlers in creating those routines can be really powerful.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so like maybe you sit down together
Okay.
and you create like a visual schedule, with pictures, and that way they're not just being told what to do. They're part of kind of the decision-making process.
That's brilliant. It gives them the sense of like ownership over their day.
Exactly.
And I bet that really helps with those transitions.
Yeah.
Especially when it's, time to turn off the screen
Sure.
and move on to something else.
Yeah. Now, speaking of engaging alternatives to screens, the guide has a whole section on interactive storytelling,
Oh, wow.
which I found really fascinating.
Yeah.
It's all about harnessing the power of imagination
Okay.
and bringing stories to life in a way that really captures a toddler's attention.
I've always loved reading aloud to my little ones.
Yeah.
But this idea of like interactive storytelling is really intriguing to me.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Okay, well, imagine this. You and your toddler are sitting in a circle, right?
Okay.
And you start a story, maybe something simple like once upon a time there was a little bunny who loved to hop.
Okay.
And then you pass this special storytelling object, could be anything, a pine cone, stuffed animal, to your toddler, and they get to add to the story.
Oh, wow.
So maybe they say the bunny hopped all the way to the garden, and then you add another part and so on.
So it's like collaborative storytelling.
Exactly.
Oh, I love that. You're like building a narrative together.
Yeah, and you can already see how it taps into those creative juices.
For sure.
What else? Well, they recommend, using simple props from nature.
Okay.
Those pine cones we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Maybe the pine cone becomes a character in the story, or a handful of leaves becomes a magical forest.
It's all about like bringing those stories off the page.
Yeah.
Into their world.
Exactly.
And I bet it's a great way to like incorporate some of those nature elements we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So you're not just telling a story, you're creating a whole sensory experience.
That's right.
Okay, that's awesome. What else? Oh, does it say anything about asking like open-ended questions?
Yes, they emphasize that too. Things like, what do you think will happen next?
Right. Or how would you solve this problem?
I see.
So you're really encouraging them to think critically.
Okay.
And use their imaginations.
Okay, this makes me want to gather up my kids and just head outside for a storytelling adventure right now.
Oh, I know, right.
But before we get too carried away, let's take a step back and look at kind of the bigger picture here.
Okay.
Why does all this matter so much? I mean, is it really just about, keeping toddlers entertained?
It's so much more than that.
Yeah.
And what's really powerful about the guide is how it connects these activities to long-term well-being.
Oh, okay.
So we're not just like filling time.
Right.
We're actually building a foundation for healthy habits that'll last a lifetime.
So we're talking physical health, emotional well-being, cognitive development.
It's all connected.
It's all interconnected.
Yeah.
Like we're planting seeds for a thriving future.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
And this isn't like a solo mission, right?
No. It takes a family.
Oh, right.
To do this.
It takes a village.
Yeah.
Yeah. Creating this culture of screen-free fun.
Right.
It involves everyone. Parents, grandparents, siblings, everyone.
So it's not just about setting limits and like offering alternatives. It's about making these activities part of family life.
Exactly.
Something that everyone enjoys and looks forward to.
That's right. And celebrating those small wins along the way, too.
Oh, yeah.
Every time your toddler chooses to, build a fort instead of watching a show,
Right.
Every time they come back from a nature walk with, pockets full of treasures.
Right.
Those are victories worth celebrating.
You're absolutely right. It's those little moments that make it all worthwhile.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. From the benefits of outdoor play to the magic of interactive storytelling. I'm already feeling inspired to kind of put some of these ideas into practice.
That's great.
But before we wrap up, there's one more, I think, crucial element we need to explore. And that is, how do we create those engaging spaces that make screen-free fun, like irresistible? The art of setting the stage.
The art of setting the stage for adventure. That's where we'll pick up in our next segment.
Perfect.
We'll dive into the guide's suggestions for designing these play areas that spark imagination and make it easy for toddlers to choose creativity over screens.
Awesome. I can't wait. As we were talking about creating these engaging play spaces, it made me think about my own childhood. We had this big cardboard box, and my parents would let us turn it into anything we wanted. One day it was a spaceship, next it was a castle. It's amazing how much joy we got out of something so simple.
Right. And it speaks to something the guide emphasizes, which is that you don't need, fancy toys or expensive equipment to create a stimulating environment. It's more about setting the stage and letting your toddler's imagination take over.
So what kind of stages, so to speak, does the guide recommend? Does it give specific examples of play areas that we can create?
It does, yeah. One suggestion that I thought was really neat was the idea of designating specific zones for different types of play. So you could have a reading nook with comfy cushions and soft lighting and maybe a basket overflowing with books.
Yeah.
Or an art corner stocked with crayons and paints and all those creative materials.
Love that. So it's you're creating these little invitation zones for different types of play. And that makes me wonder, what about bringing the outdoors in? We've talked a lot about the benefits of playing outside. But what happens when the weather's not cooperating or it's too cold?
Yeah, that's a great point. And the guide addresses that too. They talk about incorporating natural elements into your indoor spaces.
Okay.
So, think potted plants, maybe a small sandbox, a collection of pine cones and leaves, anything to bring a little bit of that natural world inside.
So even if you're stuck indoors, you can still create that sensory experience that kind of sparks that curiosity and imagination.
Exactly.
Okay. Does the guide say anything about, like, how we arrange these spaces? Is it all about, aesthetics, or is there more to it than that?
Well, there's definitely more to it than just making things look pretty. The guide really stresses the importance of functionality and accessibility.
Okay.
So, like, toys and materials should be stored in a way that makes it easy for toddlers to see them, reach them, and put them away independently.
Makes sense. So if it's all, out of reach or hidden in bins,
Yeah.
they're probably less likely to engage with it. And I guess involving them in the organization process could be really empowering too, right?
Absolutely. And the guide actually suggests that you involve toddlers in setting up and organizing those spaces as much as possible.
Oh, cool.
So maybe they help choose which books go on the reading nook or which art supplies are displayed.
Well, that's a brilliant idea. It not only gives them a sense of ownership, but it also teaches those valuable life skills, like tidying up, taking care of their belongings.
Exactly. And speaking of keeping things tidy, the guide also has some interesting tips for managing the inevitable clutter that comes with with toddlerhood. One suggestion is to use clear storage bins so they can easily see what's inside.
Okay.
Another idea is to rotate toys and materials regularly.
Toy rotation. So what's the benefit of that?
Well, think about it this way. If a toddler sees the same toys every single day, they're bound to get, bored with them, right?
Right.
But if you rotate toys, if you bring out a new batch every week or two, it's like having a brand new toy store.
Oh, that's such a smart idea. Like, it's a built-in boredom buster.
Exactly.
And it probably makes cleanup a little easier too,
Yeah.
since you're not dealing with, like, a million toys at once.
Yeah, a smaller set.
Okay. So we've got our engaging spaces, creative activities, our limited screen time. But there's still one crucial element we haven't talked about yet. Routines.
Yes, those trusty anchors of family life. The guide really emphasizes how important it is to maintain consistent routines, especially when it comes to balancing screen time with active play.
Right. So we're talking about, like, establishing a daily schedule
Yeah.
that includes designated times for meals, naps, playtime, and, yeah, even screen time.
Exactly. It's all about creating that predictability.
Okay.
When toddlers know what to expect,
Right.
it reduces that anxiety and resistance.
Yeah.
It helps them feel safe and secure, knowing that their needs will be met in this predictable way.
Hmm. Does the guide give any specific advice on, like, how to create these routines? I'm sure every family is different.
Yeah.
So what works for one might not work for another.
Absolutely. There's no one-size-fits-all approach, but they do have some helpful tips. One suggestion is to involve your toddler in the process as much as possible, just like we talked about with setting up those play spaces. So maybe you sit down together and create a visual schedule using, pictures or symbols.
I've seen those. Those are great.
Yeah.
Like a little picture map of the day.
Yeah, yeah. And it really helps them because they can actually see
Yeah.
what's coming up next.
Right.
And they can be customized
Okay.
to fit your family's needs. So if one family likes to start their day with outdoor play, while another prefers, a quiet morning routine with books and puzzles,
Right.
the visual schedule can reflect that.
So it's all about finding what works for your family
Yes.
and then just sticking to it.
Consistency is key.
Right.
They emphasize that over and over again in the guide.
And it makes sense. I mean, it's just like you wouldn't expect a toddler to learn the ABCs overnight.
Right.
You can't expect them to adapt to this brand new routine instantly.
Yeah. It takes time.
Yeah.
Patience, lots of positive reinforcement.
And I imagine it's not about being, like, super rigid or inflexible either.
No, of course not.
There's always room for spontaneity and flexibility within that, like, framework.
Absolutely. Life happens, plans change,
Right.
and sometimes you just got to go with the flow.
Exactly.
So those returns should be adaptable to your child's needs and
Okay.
interests.
Yeah.
The goal isn't to create a strict military schedule.
Yeah, it's not boot camp.
Yeah, it's more about providing that sense of structure,
Mhm.
predictability that helps everyone thrive.
It's like we're creating a dance.
Oh, I
right?
like that.
like between structure and freedom,
Yeah.
screen time and active play,
That's a beautiful analogy.
like adult guidance and toddler exploration.
And like any good dance, it takes practice,
Yeah.
patience, a willingness to learn from our missteps.
And to celebrate those moments when everything comes together perfectly. You
Yes.
know, like when your toddler's so engrossed in like building a fort or telling a story
Yeah.
that they completely forget about the screen.
Those are the moments that make it all worthwhile.
Those are the best. Those are the magic moments.
Yeah. And those moments are more likely to happen when we create that environment,
Yeah.
where those engaging activities are available.
Right.
Routines provide a sense of security, and we as parents and caregivers,
Yeah.
we model that love of learning and exploration.
Mm-hmm. As we kind of wrap up our deep dive into creating this, screen-free world for toddlers, I got to say I'm feeling pretty hopeful.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get like overwhelmed by,
Yeah.
screens. They're everywhere.
Right. They're everywhere.
But this guide has given us so many good strategies to make a real difference,
I completely agree. And, one of the things I really appreciate about the guide is it's balanced.
Right.
It acknowledges the challenges of managing screen time in this digital age, but it also reminds us that, we have the power to create this more balanced and fulfilling environment for our kids.
Right. And it's not about being perfect.
Oh, absolutely not.
There are going to be days when the screen wins.
Of course.
And that's okay. We're all human. We all make mistakes. And sometimes those little ones just need a little extra screen time to like unwind or de-stress or whatever. So.
Yeah, the guide emphasizes progress over perfection.
Right.
It's about making those small but sustainable changes, over time.
Okay.
Not trying to overhaul everything overnight.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And celebrating those small wins.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Along the way.
Speaking of celebrations, one of the things that really stuck with me from the guide was this idea of making screen-free fun, like a family affair.
Oh,
It's not just about setting limits for the toddlers.
Right.
It's about creating a culture of play and exploration that, like, everyone can enjoy.
Exactly. And when we, as parents and caregivers, model that love of learning and creativity and those outdoor adventures, we're really sending a powerful message to our kids.
Right.
We're showing them that these things are important to us.
Yeah.
That they can be fun and rewarding, too.
And it's, a chance to create those shared memories that like last a lifetime.
Yes.
I still remember those like family hikes we would take when I was a kid. We'd go out to the woods, we'd build forts out of like fallen branches, come home with pockets full of, pine cones and acorns and stuff.
I love that.
It's just, those are the kind of experiences that shape our childhood. So
Absolutely.
I think it's so important, maybe even more important now than ever, to create those opportunities for our kids.
Yeah, especially in a world that's so dominated by screens now.
Exactly. So as we bring our deep dive to a close, I want to leave you with a little something to think about.
Okay.
Imagine a world where play is valued as highly as like academic achievement.
Wow.
Where creativity is nurtured as carefully as, cognitive skills.
Yeah.
Where time spent outdoors is considered essential to a well-rounded childhood.
What a beautiful vision.
Right.
And it starts with us, the parents, caregivers, educators, everyone who plays a role in shaping those early experiences.
Right.
It starts with us making that conscious effort
Yes.
to prioritize play, encourage exploration, create those screen-free moments that spark joy and wonder.
It's about remembering that, childhood is precious.
It is.
It's a time for discovery, imagination, a time to build those like foundational skills that last a lifetime. And it's a time that should be cherished, not rushed.
Beautifully said.
So to all the parents and caregivers out there, embrace the adventure.
Yes.
Create those magical moments, celebrate the small wins, and remember that every step towards a more balanced, more active, more screen-free lifestyle makes a difference. Happy exploring, everyone.